Just to let you know, this is going to be the last podcast on this channel. So if you'd like to continue watching the podcasts that we upload later and later, please check the description and please check the comments and check our Facebook page, facebook.com/long live it all. Long live it all. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy this episode. And we're live. Welcome to Long Live Podcast. I'm James Reardon Waters. It's a very rainy day out there. Not very muggy, very windy, very cold. I am joined by Alex Terry to discuss the topic, agreeability will kill your spirit. Now, this was an interesting discussion point for me because, thank you. We had a bit of a bout, right? About in relation to disagreeability, and you said something that really struck a nerve with me, and the more I thought about it, the more I was like, yeah, he's fucking right. And it was, do you base your, it's about whether you base your friendships, the quality of your friendships, over how agreeable your friends are. And I was like, do you do that? And I realized that I have great friends, but I realized that a lot of the judgment I was making was based off of that very thing, how agreeable and how agreeable your friends are. And this isn't a criticism for other people, but I realized that I was also sort of making myself as agreeable as possible, and I realized it was based off of this worry and this fear that if I disagreed with someone on something, or I didn't fully satisfy them in whatever phrase I said, that I would alienate them. They would dislike me a little bit more, right? And after as a day that I decided to let go of this, and not be deliberately disagreeable, but just put down my agreeability, and I felt amazing. I felt so invigorated, right? Yeah.
It's like maybe like a shield for people to put up. I think we're so I don't know, intimidated by the things that we don't necessarily agree with, right?
Right, exactly. It's like,
so we shy away from them.
Yeah. That's very important. We shy away from the things that we disagree on, and if we do disagree, we like to preface it or post it with I'm sorry if we disagree. I'm sorry if this is bad, as if there was anything wrong with disagreeing. And this is the crux, I think. It's like you end up sort of thinking that if you do disagree with a person, then you're not in their good books anymore. And it's the strangest thing. And we were speaking a little bit about how it inhibits, how it pushes down proper development.
Yeah. I think the things that make us uncomfortable probably gives us an indication that we're doing something right, rather than it's not something to hide away from. Otherwise you kind of end up constantly preferring a seat of your own comfort, right? And it just halts any forward thinking, I suppose. Like if you're looking at things that you own, that only that you want to hear and that you only want to look at. Is there any room for change? Is there any room for development and progression?
Yeah, exactly. And I've really found that the best things can come from disagreeing with someone. Not forcefully disagreeing with someone, but just disagreeing and saying, I don't agree with that. And rather than hold your shields up for this, I'm going to move the chair a bit closer. Rather than hold your shields up for fear of, whatever, fear of, oh right, we don't agree on that, therefore something's wrong. We can actually synthesize our viewpoints, or we can learn what mistakes we're making, and And I wouldn't have even got to that point if you didn't disagree with me about agreeability. If that's not confusing, I mean, and that's just an example. Being able to recognize that I had a flaw in the fact that I was too agreeable. Not. I want to make a point that everyone is different. Everyone is different, and some people are more agreeable and some people are more disagreeable, and that's fine. But I think that we are living in a culture and a society where we are obsessed with constantly being in each other's good books to the point where it's just cancerous almost. And there's a little note that I wrote that's kind of interesting. It's like, if you what I sort of what my conclusion was that if all you eat is sugar and candy, you're gonna get cavities.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
And what's like comfortable for us is not necessarily good for us.
Yeah.
You look at. Art is a pretty relevant example. Like the things that have made us uncomfortable to look at have also been kind of some of the most revolutionary ideas.
Yeah.
It teaches us to see and think differently. Yeah.
Right. And like, for certainly, like, all forms of art, like literature and music and paintings are all, I find, I'm a massive fan of, like, Francis Bacon, and his stuff was,
His boundaries, he made people uncomfortable, and that was interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, exactly. And now in a way we sort of view it differently now because it's history in a way. It's like, oh, that's already happened. And what's funny about like revolutions, be it of science or art or whatever, is that whenever the new thing comes along, the new sort of, I don't know, disagreement comes along, we are always opposed to it, regardless of how many times we've actually decided. I mean, this is just my opinion, but like how many times we've decided to be, we've eventually embraced it. Like you get beat poetry, you get like Gödel's mathematics, you get abstract expressionism and then postmodern art or whatever. And every time people are like, well, that's not real art. And it's the same thing as when Impressionists came out and and the people there said that's not real art. Do you agree? Or
I guess if you're always comfortable, it kind of removes the ability to scrutinize what you're looking at. And I think you should hone your ability to doubt and question the things around you.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. I agree. There's a certain point in which, like, I believe in which skepticism of everything can be, I don't know, just a bit of a bit of an issue when you're absolutely skeptical of everything around you. You can you can go into a dark place, but
it's a balance. It's a middle road, and it kind of works both ways. Certainly not encouraging going out your way to force uncomfortable situations.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people do, whether consciously or not. But it's just to kind of be, it's you got to be like aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
That like the world is bigger than your own comfort space.
Yeah. And your comfort space can be really, it just becomes a prison after a while.
Yeah, exactly.
An echo chamber, not just the social media kind of echo chamber, but like a real life, face-to-face echo chamber of, and I'm not innocent. I'm pretty guilty of doing, this kind of constant need of approval and to reinforce my echo chamber over and over again. But once I recognized it, I realized that I could say anything I liked, and it wasn't like, and it wasn't going to be this horrible thing, and I get like this punch in the face for disagreeing or something,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like this. It's quite clear to me now that, that you can be completely free of the need to, and I'm repeating myself, but completely free of the need to constantly affirm your experiences are valid, when just not speaking at all and just automatically assuming that they're valid in the face of other people is absolutely fine. That you could actually make that the norm and make just silence and you know, just that just that, like, you know, just like, okay, we know we are two people sitting in a room, you know, that means that we're, you know, there's a harmony there, right? You don't need to top up the harmony with something else. It just inhibits you. And we talk about, like, you know, the ability to, you know, to make questionable art and questionable content. It's like it's
our duty to question ourselves. Yeah, absolutely. If we're gonna get past our, you know, everyone's got these kind of shackles that they have to face sooner or later, and if you know, sorry, Jim.
No, it's good. It's good. No worries. I completely agree. I mean, you know, ironically, in a certain way, you know, I want us to disagree at some point in the podcast. I want us to have a full blown debate. So sort of really make sure, you know.
The last thing I wanted was to come here and agree on
everything. Yeah, right. Well, I'm sure we'll get into something that we disagree with at some point. I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's just weird. It's just the conclusion that I came to was very potent, I suppose. You know.
I suppose it's in certain environments as well. Like the social media is quite a good example of it. Where, where our experience is quite limited. You know, if you go browsing through Facebook, you're gonna get like targeted ads that look at one demographic over another, and they're kind of you don't really see the other side of that. Like if you're, you know, looking at you know, on one side or the other of Brexit, for example, you know, you've got like a very separated group of people on Facebook, and
what happens on Facebook.
They're very self-affirming.
Exactly.
I think of themselves, and it kind of allows it to sort of go a bit out of hand. I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, it's the problem with social media. The problem with social media is that it sort of presents to you this false idea of yourself, and then you reinforce that false idea of yourself, and then you get information about that also affirms that false idea and takes it to the next level. So if you were interested in a mug, then maybe Facebook would start targeting more mug ads for you, and then you'd end up sort of saying, "Oh, I'm a mug person,"
Exactly.
and then you start a mug collection. But it's not your fucking choice. Like, you know, Facebook's made you do that, or LinkedIn or Twitter has made you do that, and it's a real. I mean, and it's not even something that we're aware of anymore, because it's just our reality. So we can't even perceive. We can't even perceive the repercussions, because it you know, because I am a mug person and that's all I can see.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the problem, I guess. It is
Mugs all around, mate.
Mugs all around. Yeah. I mean, this is and
if we, you know, if you don't question that, if you don't kind of stay above it in the like realm of kind of self-awareness, doubt is an important part of that. You need to be like, oh, am I a mug person? Am I just getting flogged and you know, a sentiment or an idea or this? And it's like, I mean, how easily influenced and manipulated are you by external stimuli? You've got to question it.
I mean, like, in the book I'm writing, there's a little part about, like, you know, sort of concepts having their own will, and I think to, like, social media, you know, progressing social, moral, and cultural and legal paradigms, but they're not really our choice anymore, because not only is the language written got its own assumptions that we just blindly accept, but we also have we also have the clear mediums of the concepts, you know, the mediums of, you know, reacts. And it's weird, I started thinking, like, you know, I started having this unconscious idea that, you know, there are 6 Facebook reacts, and I was thinking about, I'm not sure everyone would do this because I've got psychosis and everything, so things like that are much more potent to me. But I noticed that I was sort of seeing real life reactions in terms of these reactions. So me and Jack would have a laugh or whatever, and I'd be like, "Oh, that was a haha." And it was just like, what the fuck's going on? I mean, it was really underlying. It was this real subtle thing. But, and it obviously doesn't completely stem from Facebook. I mean, just the words themselves of laughing and humor as being like one of the subsets of happiness has its own prison, it has its own chaining of like...
I mean, it affects us in very real ways. I mean, definitely keeps us wrapped up in its chains.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're not, I think, you're not you haven't got that much of a social media presence, and now I'm doing these podcasts, I am sort of doing that, and it's because I want, it's because if I think that if people want to hear the stuff that we talk about on the podcast, then that's that's great and that's fine, but unfortunately I have to go through this whole, but not unfortunately, but like there's a certain virtue in it, but the problem is that I'm going to be sort of sucked into this idea that this is all I am, and I'm noticing it. I'm burning myself out because I'm taking in a lot of entrepreneurship content, and I'm sort of saying, and it makes me feel to myself, I am an entrepreneur, or this is the kind of mindset I have, when it's not describable, I don't think, to have this, I'm a this person, I'm a this person, I'm a this person. And there's a much deeper state of reality where you just are, and you're everything, and everything is possible. And it's not limited to, like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a podcast maker, I'm a writer, I'm a this. And that's the real, it's the real sacrifice I have to make to actually, like, to have some audience. And this is just me speaking to myself as well as everyone else, that I really have to watch myself, because I'm going to get sucked in,
Yeah, that's it, and it goes the same for everybody. We have to take...
Yeah.
We just have to be sort of brave enough to be ourselves, really, because there's such a sheen of... Yeah, like you said, like you accumulate the things around you through what you do with yourself, but it's certainly not the only thing that defines you, and it's important not to just become like a product of what you are.
Exactly, that's a fucking great word, man. A product, like, and I am creating, as I create these products, I do end up sort of viewing myself as a product. And this is, and again, it's the balance, because I do want to make these podcasts because I really enjoy them. But, like, you got to question, like, is this all I am? Is it all, am I just a podcast maker? Am I just a musician? Or, like, am I just anything, And, going to, I mean, like, it was, if you don't mind, I have this, I was saying, I made a Facebook status on my personal about, like, how psychosis can be a bitch or whatever. And I got a comment from Ryan, friend Ryan, who said you should go out into nature more. And my immediate reaction was against it. I was like, oh, what does he know about nature? How is nature going to help me? And then I realized that because he doesn't really abide by the algorithm at all. He's very much like his own person and just posts what he likes, and it's refreshing. But I noticed that I was against the idea, and I was like, well, you know what? That's actually a really good idea. And I doubted it, like you said, and I doubted this immediate response of, I don't want to go into nature. I'm busy. How is nature going to help me? And I was like, you know what? I really need to. I need to go. And I feel, and I just completely forgot that, like, nature could. It was like it was gone from my head.
But without having questioned it in the first place, then you're just kind of doing something because someone says so. You're throwing, not as bad to throw caution to the wind, but at the same time, it's good, I believe, to weigh up your options. Like you think about why you think about the suggestion, and you think about, oh, why is it a good idea? Why is it a bad idea? Like, and it kind of helps, reaffirm maybe positive ideas and things like that. Like, oh, why should I go outside? Oh, and then then you remember, like, cool. It's good to be out. Right?
It's good to be out. I mean, I prefer being out to being inside, really, and I spend a lot of time, being inside, and I think to myself, like, who's deciding that exactly? Which part of my brain has the dominant delegation of authority to tell me?
Who says that I'm not an outdoor?
exactly, and I become this. I have this fucking illusion of like, oh, I'm an inside person because I want to make content, and it's just and it is this like fucking like, it's like, well, no, I mean, like, I could go out and I could just lie on the grass and I could look at the sky or whatever, and that would probably be a way more fulfilling experience than, in moderate. I mean, I don't just do that, but rather than like just fucking like, just constantly be on the grind and constantly be making stuff, which is what is happening to me. I need to fucking doubt that and be like, I need to be like, yeah, sure, do this, but do this because you decided to do it, not because not because like not because your inhibitions tell you that more work equals better and more leisure equals a waste of time. Why?
That's it. Or I mean, vice versa. Like, vice versa. Like, being outside is not a key to, necessarily a key to help your productivity. It's just a thing to enjoy of its own.
Exactly.
Of its own nature.
Exactly. And we always have one dominate. The problem is with language is that we always have one dominate. We think that productivity should be an excuse for leisure, or that leisure should be an excuse for productivity. And most of the people actually say that more productivity is better, and the leisure justifies the productivity. It's like, oh, I've had enough leisure time, that justifies the more important thing, which is the productivity, which is like, and it's like, well, why is it like that? Why do and everyone's in a and so many people are like, in a rush. I mean, I'm lucky to do things that I enjoy, creative outlets, but like, and even then I'm still fucking like in this hole, but I'm still like, you got people that like just work doing a job that doesn't serve, doesn't they have no creative input at all, and they still think that like, I've justified this because I've sacrificed time. And it's like, why are you fucking sacrificing time? Like, yeah, why is that a fucking necessary thing? Excuse me for all my language. I have decided that this is going to be a language infused podcast. I'll use swear words, but yeah, it is interesting. It's interesting. I mean, like, your poetry is very like, what I like about your poetry is that it's a very disagreeable. You're there, and there's a no filter. It's not there to serve people's already existing. Yeah, I mean, already existing ideas. Of what it means to like, what a poem should be or whatever. And it's really good poetry. But like, I just and once people are. Once it's executed well, people are like, right, that's why I need to consume stuff like that. And and it can be from every angle. You can question from every angle, I suppose, can't you? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like, I guess with poetry, it's not about really like writing, to question the nature of what's good and bad art as well, and kind of, what's poetry? How do you define it? Like, do you agree that this is this is poetry? Do you like and if you just observe it, then what is it? What does the definition? What does the definition matter? Not really setting out to do anything like good or bad. It's just a developmental thought process. It's just.
And it'd be, I think it would be a shame, because I'm very, because like I said, I'm much more sucked into, and this is something that I don't think we do agree on, and I am much more sucked into this kind of like, making things into products, I suppose. When I see the other angle, where it's like, to make your poetry into like another product is kind of like a bit of a shame, if you agree. It's like it like it diminishes the growth process of the poetry as something besides a product.
Yeah, yeah. It becomes a finished thing for sure.
Yeah, and once.
I like the idea of leaving things unfinished.
Mm.
It's, yeah, things that matter, like like creativity, the creative process, like.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's like
It's a lifetime work, and it's not just like, oh, I have like a thing in mind that I'm gonna create, and that's that's the product. It's like it's like a self-reflective journey for sure.
Yeah, man. Not just a bloody product, which is what we are so, things are so saturated these days.
I'm an artist. I need to make art. This is the product. You become, you stop being yourself, and you become like your idea of what an artist is. Oh, what's your idea of an artist? Like, what are your associations? Like, oh, you think artists are, burnouts, or they're bourgeoisie, or one thing or another. Like, you kind of ascribe yourself these associations, and it's not the case. Like, we're creative creatures, and we need to do creative things as an output without all these shackles of definition. We're entrepreneurial by nature.
Yeah.
You're not an entrepreneur. You're a person who is entrepreneurial.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. This is really interesting, because that's a really good part to it. I spoke to a guy called Dom, and he makes films, and he said, I need to get out of the rut of calling myself a filmmaker, and start saying I make films. And just that change of words actually changes your perception of who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
Just switching it. So rather than saying I'm a musician, and then all the assumptions behind musician come out, and then that means that I do this, that means I play live shows, that means I do this, that means I do this. A musician could be something else, but if you say I make music or I play music, it just, that changes everything. And maybe you're a guy who just plays the cajon on jam night, and that's all that you have to do. And this is the problem. I mean, like, it could be as simple as, I play cajon on Tuesday nights. I do that. That's how I enjoy myself. Musician doesn't mean that I'm signed to a record label, or I do this. And being a content creator doesn't necessarily mean that you need to create quality content, and it needs to have an audience. You could be, I had some of the best times playing guitar when I was alone in Finland, looking out at a lake, and no one could listen to me, and I could play as loud as I wanted, and I wasn't doing it for anyone else but myself. And that was actually very fulfilling, and I wasn't intending to make it into a lifeless product. Yeah. It's good to ponder on that sometimes. It's good to right. This is, not to be tied by shackles of definition. To get back on the topic about agreeability, I want to talk about, if we are running out of things to talk about, I want to talk about agreeability and how catastrophic it can be on the social and political scale. That might be something interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. We can talk about that. I mean, agreeability of, over the market being benevolent, or the state being benevolent, or the military being benevolent, and being culled into obedience. Who was it? I think it might have been Hannah Arendt who said that I don't know if it was, but like they said that the greatest catastrophes of of human history were not done through disobedience, but through obedience, obedience of a religious cause, obedience of a political cause, of a party or whatever. And this can be like a real, this can, this can be, it can be catastrophic after a while. I want to know your thoughts on, obedience and agreeability leading to social catastrophe, if you have any. I mean, take your time.
Yeah, well,
Take your time. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, think about the Nazi movement. The Nazi movement was done through guards telling, doing as they're told. The Milgram experiment and the Stanford prison experiment were all like psychological experiments that exemplified.
that's it. How easily are you going to be manipulated because the authority figure is going to be, going to override. It's going to be, oh yeah, I'm going to just follow along with something that is obviously wrong just because of the implications of doing otherwise. Definitely some shameful things have happened just because.
Well, shameful is like not even the word, is it?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, literally the worst things in human history. So yeah, but yeah, I had something to say there, but like, and the way to exercise. I mean, even on the social and political scale, to exercise that disagreement, the disobedience does come from just having the will to disagree in the first place. Disobedience that only is the child of disagreement.
Yeah.
To say to the man in the lab coat that, oh, you're not going to shock these people anymore. But that's something we don't really, that's something that over time we don't have. And we fall into, I think, through history, we fall into over disagreement and over agreement. And I want to state that, like, I believe that we are in the trough, the peak of agreement again. We through social media, through this, and even to disagree with someone on Facebook about something because they share a different opinion of yours is still agreeability to your cause. Is that? I mean, you can agree with that, but like, it's like agreeability of like, this is my cause. I'm a Remainer. I'm a Leaver. I'm a leftist. I'm a rightist or whatever. And it's like, and you buy into everything that the cause compels you to do, and you don't think of yourself. I mean, this is the problem with with so much. I mean, like,
And when like movements like this gain momentum, like, they become much more difficult to stop. Like, if they're not questioned in the early stages, like, people have to do everything they can to stay skeptical of all ideas that are in front of them, because I believe that, like, as human beings, I don't think we want necessarily to do bad to each other. Like, I think the will to survive is the forefront, right? And we want naturally the survival of everyone else.
I think the opposite's true. I think we, and feel free to disagree. We want to disagree at some point, so maybe now. But like, I think the opposite's true. I think we naturally want to make each other as happy as possible. But this turns into some superficial thing of like, I want to please. It becomes, I want to please you for some perverse idea. I want to please you because, in a sense, that I believe that this religious cause will do you good, and this will make you better. And it will also make me a good person. And it's just like this real perverse kind of, that who's to say you even know what's good for them, And who's to say that that what they're doing is good for you? And it's this feedback loop of, you convert someone into a devout Mormon, and then the Mormon goes around and says, oh, I've really been changed. And then they go and try and fix other people. And it's this loop of, I think very rarely we actually want to, to sort of hurt each. The problem is that eventually, you become malevolent because your good deeds, attempted good deeds, which may not have even been good deeds in the first place, haven't gone to plan, and you're not.
It can hide our true nature, I suppose, as well, if we're not just willing to like confess our true everything that's on our minds, to just like speak about it and just not be worried to be disagreed with. It's like the only, I don't know, I believe one of the only real freedoms that we have is the freedom to like disagree with another person and say like, no, as a sovereign person,
And the thing is that you don't have to. And I want to say, not to interrupt, but I want to say, like, it doesn't matter if you're wrong. It doesn't matter if your disagreement is wrong. You should exercise the ability, in my opinion, to simply disagree, even if you know that you might not be true. Because then, once you disagree, you know that once you disagree, you know that you're wrong, and you would never have known that if you never spoke your mind. And this obviously comes from like some infatuation with our own opinions to be held as perfect all the time. We want to constantly be like, right, okay, I want to, I know a few people that like are constantly checking up on their self-image as if they're saying, I mean, I do it, of course, I think everyone does it to a certain degree, but there's constant checkup of like, oh, I realized that came off bad. I realized that came off bad. This probably may have not pleased you, and we don't have the balls to just say, okay, this is what I think, and why don't I? And feel free to disagree. There's this. In regards to there was a person that I knew that broke up with their boyfriend because they were like being quite abusive or whatever, and I'm not going to mention their name. And I was too agreeable to upset her. I said I was like, I think you should do what's best for you. I mean, if this is hurting you, I think you should consider changing, weighing up your options. And I could have just said to her, you should fucking break up with him. I don't know if I'm right, but you should fucking break up with him, and then then maybe get the evidence that I was wrong about telling about that. But I didn't even have. Obviously I didn't have the gall to be disagreeable in that sense, because I was worried that if I was proved wrong, I'd look bad, and it's just certain
situations call for certain responses.
Right.
It's important not to take like a real black and white approach, isn't it? Like, you can't just doubt everything, but you can't be like attached to notions and things like that, without knowing very much about the situation. It's hard to know exactly how to act, isn't it?
Yeah. It is that definite, like, you must know the situation, but like, just honesty. I mean, there's a guy Roy Masters who says that that when we do the la-di-da thing, it kills you, and this is very, very similar to what I'm actually talking about. But when you go like, oh, that's a nice dress, la da la, oh, thank you, it's just we are killing our spirits. We are putting ourselves, we are assuming that the only way of talking to other people is to please each other on the superficial and never on the deep level. I think of an old Sweatshirt lyric who says, I just broke up with my bitch because we ain't argue enough, which I think is a sick lyric. And I know he's like, and in the song he's just doing, he's doing this like, bravado, like I don't fucking care what you think, and he wants to be controversial or whatever it is, but it's actually very true. The sort of thing we're thinking about now it's got this very, it's very true element in the fact that, arguments can be very, as long as they're pushing a development, they can be very important. They can be very important. If you suppress your arguments, it's gonna, if it doesn't come out, it's gonna fucking hurt you, and if it does come out, it's going to be twisted, and you're going to develop, if you agree, you're going to develop more malicious intentions of like, You
I
know,
don't know. I think if you don't discuss, then it can also become quite.
okay.
It becomes an echo chamber in yourself, wherein you only reflect your own views.
Yeah.
If you don't express those, then there isn't the room to for someone else to say, oh, this is true or this is untrue, and then yeah, you can't move towards not necessarily an agreement, because the aim isn't necessarily to agree, but just to for the sake of argument, I suppose.
That's a good point. Actually, I didn't think about that. You know, argue. Exactly. You changed my kind of perspective there, actually, because like, yeah, because if you know, I guess you shouldn't really argue to the sake of just coming to some agreeing conclusion. You know.
No.
Nice. Good point. That's a good point.
I mean, I was reading about Socratic methods just yesterday, and that was Socrates and his group of Greek guys.
Yes,
Whatever.
following. Yeah.
They would start a discussion, and then they would literally just argue on points and disagree, like not just because of again, not to get to a point where you can all agree on a subject, but just to provoke thought.
Yeah, actually, that's really insightful. That's really insightful.
We need thought-provoking things.
That's a really good point. Actually, I didn't think about that. Yeah, you don't have to. I guess you don't have to like. You don't. It's actually very, very. If you're just going to arrive at agreement, that still implies that agreement is actually better than disagreement in the first place, and that's obviously like.
It's almost relieving to like agree with to disagree with someone when you come to like the end of an argument, and you're just like, oh, it's disagreements can be satisfying. They're like affirming in a sense, because like if you can't, it helps you construct a more full picture of how to live and kind of regulate yourself and how to live with other people if you're taking in views from everywhere. So long as like I think it's important again not to say anything for definite, right? Because in a sense, like so many things are subjective, so one person's version of events could very well factually be different from yours because of opinion. Creating dialogue like allows you to come together on an idea and maybe break off in different directions.
And important, not even to just come together on an idea, but like I mean, I made.
You never know what else you might find.
Exactly, because and this is how easy. I mean, I sort of did a 180 because I kind of ended up saying that disagreements are good, so you can eventually agree, and it is like I mean, I made a logo for the Long Live franchise or whatever, like with the podcasts and the events and everything else I'm going to do in the future, and I got to take my time with that because it's it can be quite exhausting, and what's the fucking point if you're not like just relaxing. But I really implemented the kind of like, I'm not going to really give a fuck what people think of the logo because I like the logo and I think the logo is good, and too much feedback can be kind of fascistic and chaining and it prohibits your freedom of like I like the logo, it's my project, so I'm gonna use the logo. Even if everyone disagreed with me, I'd be like, fuck it, I don't care. I don't care. I like this logo. That's it, man. That's it. Should we finish there? I think we should finish there. This has been and now it's time for our honorable mention segment where we have to thank Maisie, who says 9/11 was an inside job. This has been Long Live Podcast, episode 5. Thanks for coming, Alex. Have a good night. Don't get too cold. Stay inside, get a blanket, and have a good day. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.
Peace.
Peace, peace.